Welcome to the B Block Podcast. Brandon Scott, your host here, and we are on Kevin Durant watch. We have to do this episode while we're still on Kevin Durant watch before this deal actually gets done because Kevin Durant's going to get traded, and it seems like Kevin Durant is going to get traded really soon. Hell, I'm hoping that by the time I post this episode, we still have an episode to post, and it is still relevant when it publishes that Kevin Durant has not been traded already when we get here. And I want to specifically spend some time, since we know some things now about the Kevin Durant sweepstakes, his preferred wish list, the teams that are actually interested in acquiring Kevin Durant are the ones that have been most active in discussions for Kevin Durant. Since we got some intel on that from the NBA insiders, I want to spend this episode essentially making the case for Kevin Durant to the Rockets. And if you've been following me, if you follow what we do on Sports Radio 610, you know I've been on this Kevin Durant thing since the very beginning, or as early as it could have possibly been a thing, at least this year. I think I was a little bit. No, you know what? Even last summer, when it was like, yeah, they're interested in Kevin Durant, I'm like, or Kevin Durant is a possibility. I'm like, that seems pretty easy. I don't get the controversy. I don't see, like, I don't really see all of the other parts of the argument. Now, of course, the longer this goes, the more it gets discussed, the more you kind of allow yourself to see the other side of the argument. And I've talked about this on the radio, and I'll mention it here now. I've spent a significant time over the last few days since we've been getting some of this Kevin Durant reporting. I've spent a lot of time trying to talk myself out of a Kevin Durant trade. Like, the cool thing about this position that the Rockets are in is that they don't really need to do this. They don't really need or have to disrupt the thing that they've got going. They could easily just run things back. And we already seen that they re-signed Steven Adams to a 3-year, $39 million deal, I believe was the clip that's out there. And like that, so they've talked about continuity. They got a lot of young players. The big dominoes to fall for the Rockets this offseason were going to be Steven Adams' free agency and the option on Fred VanVleet's deal and how exactly they were going to go about his future with the team. But you've got the continuity and you've got the argument for continuity with the Rockets, considering how the last 2 years have gone for them. Best turnaround in the league 2 years ago. And then this year going from out of the playoffs entirely to a 2 seed. We understand they lost in the first round to a 7 seed Golden State Warriors team. But of course, if you follow the season, you know that the difference between a 2 seed and an 8 seed was not, I would say, was not significant. And definitely less so than previous years. So the case is there for the Rockets to run it back. The case is there for the Rockets to stick with what they got. Now I don't know exactly what the case is for all of these damn draft picks that they're hoarding if they're not going to use them to go out and up the ante and improve their team. And maybe that's its own discussion. But in terms of Kevin Durant, I just feel like when you look around the entire landscape and take the inventory in for what it is, Kevin Durant makes the most sense for the Rockets, and the Rockets make the most sense for Kevin Durant. I'm going to make that case here on this episode, but that's where I want to go with this. Kevin Durant makes the most sense for the Rockets, and the Rockets make the most sense for Kevin Durant. The question, though, is not really about any of that. Like, if you're a Rockets fan, if you're just a casual observer of the NBA, or not even casual, if you're a diehard and you're really intrigued by this and how everything plays out, it's not really about what's best for Kevin Durant, nor is it about what's best for the Rockets. Even though what's best for Kevin Durant is going to factor into this, we understand that they've been working together. The Suns and Kevin Durant are working together on this trade. But it's really going to come down to, and this is what the tricky part is, we can do all of this arguing about whether you want Kevin Durant or think the Rockets should trade for Kevin Durant or not, and we can be on different sides of the argument. But it's really going to come down to an even harder thing to put, I think, a pin in, and that's, what do the Suns think is best for them? Like, what direction do they actually want to go in? in this post Durant era, and not only what direction do they want to go in, but then who do they at that point think gives them the best chance to go in that direction? And that I don't really know. That I don't really know. Like, do they do the? And I've seen the reporting out there, but I still don't feel like I got a great sense for whether the Suns are going to be more comfortable with a bevy of draft picks and sort of acknowledging that they got to reset this thing and look toward the future. Of course, Devin Booker's still there. They can't get rid of Bradley Beal even if they want to. So they got some useful players. Do they want to, as opposed to wasting the prime years of some of these useful players that they're paying a bunch of money to, do they want to kind of just retool this thing and get back players, or are they interested in reinvesting in their own future, specifically with the Rockets who have their picks, or just finding, the best deal, whatever the best deal they can get of draft picks? Like, what is it, players now or is it players in the future? What exactly is the Suns' timeline? How do they view themselves? That is a hard thing to predict because we've seen them improperly view themselves before. That's what got them here in this position to begin with. So I don't know what the Suns' motivations are or what their competence level is, what their aptitude is. I don't know. I don't know. I wish I did. But in terms of as far as I can see it, and the case for Kevin Durant and the case for the Rockets, this to me is a perfect fit. It is a perfect fit, and I'll lay it out. The Rockets were one of the best teams defensively last year, as we know, and one of the worst half court teams in basketball. Kevin Durant immediately fixes that. Like, it is the immediate fix. And I thought about this with Ime Udoka as the head coach. Like, I think that there are fair questions to ask about the Rockets offense and how it's coached, how it's designed, what it does, and like, which is it? Do they have an unimaginative coaching staff that doesn't really know how to create an offensive identity? Or do they have players that are like not don't have the highest basketball IQ offensively, or maybe can't take in a lot, aren't the best, just aren't the best executioners or whatever it is that they would like to do? Which one of them is it? I think based off of what we've seen, the talent is certainly there. You talk about a Jalen Green and a Ben Thompson and a Jabari Smith Jr., different guys. I think the talent is definitely there. And this coaching staff, for all of the great things that they've done over the last couple of years, has left a lot to be desired in terms of building an offense, creating an offensive identity for the team outside of like the obvious, right? The offensive identity being the best offensive players, right? Alperen Sengun, Jalen Green, of course. So that's been a lot of the offensive identity. When Fred VanVleet is at his best, he, provides something there. But as long as you're going to have a coaching staff that doesn't seem to be all that imaginative offensively, not like low basketball IQ, just not a whole lot of bells and whistles offensively in terms of what they do. It's like read the defense, make the right play, and go from there. Like they don't. There's not a lot of cutting. There's not a lot of ball movement. There's not a lot of player movement, and we talk about that quite a bit. If that's gonna be the team, or if that's gonna be the coaching staff that's running the team, then you need a player like Kevin Durant, a player like what James Harden has been throughout his career, like, and Anthony Edwards. Like, you remember the quote from James Harden that wasn't that long ago about, I don't fit into a system, I am an offensive system. I thought he was right about that. That was a that was a wildly arrogant thing to say out loud, but not incorrect by James Harden. You won't really get any criticism out of me, James, for saying that. He is an offensive system. Like, James Harden, ISO ball, between his shooting, passing, and overall shot creation and ability, that was an offensive system. We saw it here for years in Houston and the other places that he's been since then. He has been an offensive system. Like, his ability to create shots has been the preface of the offenses that he's been at basically everywhere since he got to Houston, since he wasn't a bench player for OKC. So back to Kevin Durant, I feel like his ability is best suited, or maybe I should put it a different way. This coaching staff's limitations, the best answer to the coaching staff's limitations are a player like Kevin Durant. And if you're thinking like me and that the coaching staff is here to stay, that Ime Udoka is here to stay, and I think he should be. I don't understand why there would be any other argument against it. Even if I'm levying this criticism against him, Ime Udoka not going nowhere. So if Ime Udoka is going to be the coach for the foreseeable future, like I don't think that you can have unreliable offensive players who you are required to rely on, and that's what they got right now. And especially on the perimeter with the Jalen Green situation, who I don't want to necessarily call unreliable because I think that his playoffs made his overall season kind of get lost in how good he was at times. But we saw it, okay? We saw it. And so the case for Kevin Durant is in part, the case for Kevin Durant to the Rockets is in part Ime Udoka, not just their previous relationship, but the kind of offense or the kind of player that I feel like you need to have to run that offense. Like, I don't feel like the coaching necessarily has the answers on offense as much as the players got to have the answers on offense for Ime Udoka. And so, like, what's the Rockets' offensive system? ISO ball, hopefully drive and kick if you can. So it's ISO ball, pick and roll, Alperen Sengun, post up, Alperen Sengun in the high post. That's the offense. Okay. So it's great when Alperen Sengun's having a great day. Okay. But, and it's great when some of them other guys are having a great day. If Jalen Green is on, right? Game 2 of the first round, right? When Jalen Green's got it figured out, it looks amazing. But they don't have great enough ISO players for ISO ball to be as much of a theme of their offense as it is. And I don't know what the answer is for that outside of becoming better at ISO ball. Like I don't feel like the answer is let's make the coaching staff more imaginative and creative with how they use these athletes that they got on this team. They can't really shoot, but can dunk and can run and can follow directions if you just tell them, hey, do this, do that. I don't see that. I see the answer being, absent of this dramatic leap by one of their perimeter players, the answer is Kevin Durant. Okay. The Rockets were one of the worst half court offenses in all of basketball. Kevin Durant remains pure. Like his game remains pure. I want to point this out for people who are like stuck on Kevin Durant's age and the fact that he turns 37 in September. Okay. There's a couple of things about that. The reason why that doesn't bother me. You're bringing Kevin Durant in and relying on him to be your primary perimeter scorer. But you already have two guys, and I don't think you're dealing Alperen Sengun. I don't think you're dealing Amen Thompson. Those are guys that are probably untouchable in this deal and should be. So you already have guys that are emerging as one's an all-star and one is an all-NBA defender. It's their team, and that's not no static about like territorial type of thing. I think Kevin Durant, and especially his personality, I think he will gladly come in and concede that, hey, I might be the leading scorer on this team. I might be the best perimeter scorer on this team. I might be the most iconic player on this team, iconic person, a part of this franchise at this point, if you bring in Kevin Durant. But the way this is going, this is Alperen Sengun's team, the newly minted all-star. And this is Amen Thompson's team, the newly minted all-NBA defensive guy who it seems to be well on his way to becoming an all-star, if not even better than that, an all-NBA type of player. Like, you still have guys on the team, and I feel like when the conversation fixates so much on Jalen Green, it's easy to forget about these other two guys that have kind of already, if we're just being honest about it, surpassed Jalen in terms of how they're viewed in the NBA and what their futures and how their futures are viewed. It's a reason why you hear about Amen Thompson being the untouchable player and not Jalen Green. It's the reason why you hear about Alperen Sengun being the untouchable player and not Jalen Green. With all due respect to Jalen Green, who I personally have taken it upon myself to defend time and time again. But when it comes down to this, when it comes down to the opportunity cost of this, I feel like this is just too good to pass up. Okay. So Kevin Durant, 37, doesn't bother me because I don't feel like you're asking him to come in here and be the Kevin Durant that he was per se, or under the same circumstances. Okay. He's still going to be kind of the same guy because his game is just pure, right? But it's not even the same circumstances of the Warriors where he was really joining somebody else's team. But to his credit, he was able to go to the Warriors that had Steph Curry and then become the best player on the team. Pretty damn impressive. You're not asking them to do that. The Nets thing, okay, a collection of stars between him, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving, but him expected to be kind of like the guy, that guy. This Suns thing, same thing. Okay, there is a there is a simultaneous passing of the torch, even though he's the one that's coming over to he's the new guy coming over to the team. He's coming over to the team as a new guy, but still somehow passing the torch of like face of the franchise type of stuff to Alperen Sengun and Amen Thompson. I do believe that. So I'm not as worried about him, being 37, because to me the future still lies in those guys. Like those guys are the future. When Kevin Durant, however long the Kevin Durant thing lasts, whenever he goes and says his goodbyes, the hope is that you're still building a team around Alperen Sengun and Amen Thompson. Also worth noting that there's no guarantee of that, right? Like this could very well be, given how the salary structures and the collective bargain agreement, like it's not like you have you draft a guy, it works out, and now you got that guy for the next 10 years. Or now you got a 10-year, 15, 20-year window of greatness because you got this superstar. It does not work that way. Like all of this, based on the CBA, everybody should be looking at their windows as being 3 to 4 years or whatever it is. And so I've got pretty decent level of confidence that Kevin Durant, absent something catastrophic that I cannot predict, I got pretty good confidence that Kevin Durant at 37 is going to be able to play at this level for the next at least 2 years, probably the next 3 to 4. I have no reason to believe that he can't do that based off of watching him play recently. And I think that's the important part. I feel like too many people maybe follow the NBA but don't watch the NBA. And so they're aware of Kevin Durant with the Suns and how it hasn't worked out and how it didn't work out with the Nets. And it just seems like, another Kevin Durant experience, right? So like everywhere he goes, the teams don't get better. But that's really something that you only say if you're like loosely following it and not really watching him play. Okay. So I think this is important to point out in the case for Kevin Durant to the Rockets. Kevin Durant, this was pointed out. ESPN pointed this out. Shams Sharani had a story a few days ago where he's announcing, or reporting, I should say, that Kevin Durant's preferred landing spots are the Heat, Spurs, and the Rockets. And more on that in just a second. But he notes here some stats that I think are key for people to remember whenever you want to do the, man, he's 37 years old and I don't want no 37-year-old on my team. All right. I get that on the face of it. I wouldn't want just any old 37-year-old. I get that. But this particular one, and mind you, he's 36 now, he'll be 37 in September. Kevin Durant was the best jump shooter in the NBA last year. Shot an NBA best 49.7%. And also an NBA best 53.1% at mid-range shots. So the best mid-range and overall jump shooter in all of the NBA at 36 years old. And I got a hard time feeling like that's just going to suddenly drop off based off of what we've watched from Kevin Durant over the years, how we understand his game to work. A big part of his game being the fact that he's that tall doing things that people that tall aren't supposed to do. He's Kevin Durant is basically what if you took the perfect shooting guard, and then made him 6'11", then made him 7 feet. Because the perfect shooting guard is not that tall. Perfect shooting guard somewhere between 6'5" to 6'8". 6'8" would be on the higher end. That's really good size. But 6'5" to 6'8" would be the perfect size for a shooting guard. And then as far as skills and ability, it would be the skills and ability that Kevin Durant has. Except Kevin Durant has that, and he's like 7 feet tall. Okay. So the NBA's best on jump shots and mid-range shots. He also shot the highest percentage on off the dribble jumpers. So off the dribble, pull up jumper, off the dribble, right? So this to me speaks to the ISO nature of his game. Like, give the ball to Kevin Durant and let him cook. They did that. Didn't necessarily have a great team. Not necessarily. Did not at all have a great team around Kevin Durant, the Phoenix Suns that being. And he was able to, under those circumstances, shoot an NBA best on jumpers, NBA best in shooting percentage, NBA best on jumpers, NBA best on mid-range shots, NBA best on off the dribble jumpers. And we're talking about a team that does not have it in the half court. That to me is the Rockets case. And I struggle to see the other side. Like, and maybe it's the reluctance to give up on Jalen Green, which I get. Certainly the reluctance to throw Jabari Smith Jr. into a deal, and I get that too. Like, I wouldn't ideally I wouldn't give up Jalen Green and Jabari Smith either. And I've said that too, that you shouldn't have to deal, too many of these young the core seven, if you will. But if that's what it takes to get Kevin Durant, basically what you would be doing is taking Jalen Green's minutes and giving them to Kevin Durant. I got a hard time, as much as I like Jalen Green. I got a hard time making any case other than Kevin Durant over Jalen Green. Like, sorry, that's not even a knock on Jalen Green as much as it's just a nod and a credit to Kevin Durant and what he is. And then the Jabari Smith thing is difficult because, going back to the coaching thing, if I felt like there was a better vision for him, or if they had a better way of using Jabari Smith Jr., I would be a little bit more reluctant, and I'm reluctant enough. But considering how he was underutilized and at times misused, especially down the stretch at the end of the season, I don't really know if they know what they're doing with Jabari Smith. It struck me when I was listening to some radio, some Bay Area radio, and one of the hosts mentioned Jabari Smith Jr. as somebody that he wants on the Warriors because that guy would make a perfect Warrior. And that's because of the brand of basketball that the Warriors play and how they're coached to play. His shot making would not go to waste. His ability to knock down open shots, and obviously his length can stretch the floor with his size and his length and can play defense. Like, that guy was right. He would be the perfect Warrior. He's not the perfect Rocket because the Rockets don't have, and it pains me to say it, but they don't have the system and the wherewithal to utilize him the way he needs to be used. So, hard to part with him, but he is not an answer and a fixer to the Rockets' problems the way that Kevin Durant is. And those problems are limited shot creators and apparently a coaching staff that does not have answers for how to best utilize these athletes and get them moving and making less decisions and, making less ISO decisions and just kind of moving without the basketball. Like they don't have that in terms of personnel or coaching. Kevin Durant is that in terms of personnel, and it sort of bails out the coaching a little bit in ways that the players on the team right now don't seem like they can. So he's the fixer. He's the answer to the problems that they have. Easiest answer to the problems that they have. And the guys that they would lose, I don't feel like I feel like the loss of them would be negligible for what you're getting in Kevin Durant. And especially too, I'd point out with this Steven Adams thing, I think that even changes the calculus a little bit on Jabari Smith Jr. Because I mean, look, I think he's valuable as a small ball five, and like at least he's intriguing to me as a small ball five. I don't necessarily love that, but I like it as an option. I like the optionality of it. But if they're gonna lean more into this double big thing where Şengün plays some power forward with Steven Adams in the game, kind of diminishes Jabari Smith's role a little bit. Um, Kevin Durant, as I mentioned before, is just a better version of what you want Jalen Green to be. So hate to see it, but also hate to see them go, but would love to see Kevin Durant coming in. That's the case for the Rockets. The case for Kevin Durant, I think. So here's why I think this is interesting, and a real reason why I wanted to focus this episode on this. I think that you could actually make the case that the Spurs are the best landing spot for Kevin Durant, especially when you consider his preferred options. The Spurs are one of his preferred options. And so the Spurs got a lot. I don't know exactly what a package for Kevin Durant would have to be centered around. I'd imagine, I don't know if they'd have to throw in that number 2 pick or, basically they got Wemby, not giving up Wemby, Stephon Castle, and De'Aaron Fox as their best players. I think at least. And then they got this draft pick, this number 2 overall pick that they lucked into at the lottery that they could also throw in a deal. They got an interesting combination of stuff. I don't know what it would take for them to make a deal happen. But if he was able to get there, and let's just say they still got, let's say they ended up having to get rid of De'Aaron Fox. But they still got Stephon Castle and Wemby, the last couple of rookies of the year, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I don't know how ready those two guys are for the big stage, but Kevin Durant would certainly celebrate their readiness, I feel like. Like, you're here now. I get if that's Kevin Durant's preferred spot, and I think you can make that case. I still like the Rockets a little bit more, and I'm just giving them the benefit of the doubt because they're further along the timeline. They're more accomplished. They did the 2 seed thing. I know Wemby was hurt, but they went out there and showed you. Out of all of those teams, they were the best team this year. So I got to get them the nod in that sense. But specific to this story, it sounds like the Spurs are the least active in the pursuit of Kevin Durant. So, there's a number of teams. Those 3 teams are at the top of his wish list: Spurs, Rockets, and the Heat. But out of those 3, it sounds like, according to the reporting from ESPN, Shams Charania, my bad with that. According to ESPN's Shams Charania, it sounds like of those 3 teams that the Spurs are the least active. Okay. So then that just leaves you with the Rockets and the Heat, who, if we're just being real about it, the Heat probably got some players that can make this thing competitive. But in terms of just the bevy of shit to offer, the bevy of assets, the Rockets offer would truncate, to me, anything that the Heat could offer you, unless, and the caveat here is, unless Kevin Durant agitates in such a way that he really just wants to go to the Heat and nobody else will trade for him because he's making it clear that he's not going to sign no extension and nobody feels comfortable just renting them like that for a year. If he kind of forces his way to the Heat, then all of this stuff is kind of out of the window. But on the face of, and then also if Khalil Ware, the rookie, not a rookie anymore, but they're a rookie from last year, Khalil Ware, if that's somebody that they view as the best young potential centerpiece of all of these teams that they could actually get, Wemby notwithstanding, and obviously they're not going to get Wemby, but outside of that, the best young piece of talent that they could get, if they view him that way, then hell am I talking about? It's the Heat that make the most sense to the Suns, or at least the way they see it. So I, if you look at it objectively and try to filter out the lens of, does Kevin Durant just really want to agitate his way to Miami? Are the Suns just really fixated on Khalil Ware, or just name, or Andrew Wiggins, or just name your asset in Miami? You just kind of bird's eye view, objectively look at it. Kevin Durant makes the most sense for the Rockets, and the Rockets make the most sense for Kevin Durant. They are the closest to get in there. They have the most obvious need for him to fill, and the most to offer to get him without disrupting the entire operation. So I know I took 30 minutes to make that case, and maybe you are still not sold. Maybe the shooting percentages that I threw out there for you were not good enough. The NBA best on jumpers, NBA best on mid-range shots. This is on a bad team, by the way. NBA, a bad team where they know that y'all ain't got. I mean, of course they got Devin, but they know Kevin Durant's getting the ball. Okay, and a lot of times those other guys were in and out. NBA best on jumpers, NBA best on mid-range shots, NBA best on off the dribble at 36 years old, with a game that's not above the rim, because what he got to play above the rim for, and he's 7 feet tall. 7 feet tall and can dribble and shoot. I said this on the radio, and I wrap this up by making this case, man. Kevin Durant, his game is gonna age the best for these very, very basic reasons that we understand about Kevin Durant. Okay, he'll never not be tall. He'll never not be able to dribble to his spot, and he'll never not be able to shoot. You can talk about, maybe some of his athleticism diminishes, but he's still tall, still can handle the rock, and still can shoot. And that type of game profiles pretty well late into your career. So that's where I'm at with this Kevin Durant thing. I think it's a no-brainer for the Rockets if they can make it happen. I don't want to be too married to and tied to. Remember when Rafael Stone talked about continuity for the sake of continuity and not being committed to it for that, and that something significant would have to disrupt them from staying with that continuity. I don't want to be just stuck on continuity and Jalen Green and Jabari Smith Jr. and certain players just for the sake of it. I like those players. I think they're good foundational pieces. I'll be fine if they end up running this thing back, but I don't just want to do that for the sake of it. And I think when you got an opportunity to change your team the way that the Rockets do by bringing in Kevin Durant, those are not the players that make you say no to that. That is being too. That is having that symptom of being way too into your own players. If you're a Rockets fan and you object to that is your bias of watching these guys and growing some level of attachment to them. Because otherwise, it's pretty obvious. All right, this is the B Block Podcast. Your boy Brandon Scott handling it. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you rate. Make sure you review. Make sure you tell a friend. This is a Foolish Club media product. And until next time, y'all be good.